The Jedi's departure from Coruscant would immediately send shockwaves through the galaxy. The capital planet had long symbolized the unity of the Republic, and the Jedi Temple stood as a beacon of hope, justice, and tradition. Abandoning this iconic seat of power would be interpreted by many as a sign of betrayal or weakness. The Republic, already teetering under the weight of corruption and internal dissent, would find itself further destabilized without the Jedi to serve as moral and physical protectors of its ideals. The Senate would likely see this as a dereliction of duty, and propaganda against the Jedi would reach unprecedented levels, labeling them as deserters or even enemies of the state. For the Jedi, however, this choice would represent a hard-won clarity. By leaving Coruscant, they would reject their dependency on a political machine that had been slowly eroded by Sith influence. This would allow them to act autonomously, focusing on their primary mission to guard the light against the encroaching darkness. Freed from the bureaucracy and manipulation of the Senate, the Jedi could now concentrate their efforts on building a resistance capable of combating the Sith's rising power on their own terms. This resistance would not be a mere military force, but an alliance of diverse beings from across the galaxy, unified under the Jedi's leadership. Hidden away in the Outer Rim, the Jedi could forge alliances with marginalized groups, freedom fighters, and independent systems that had grown weary of the Republic's failures. These alliances would not only provide the manpower and resources necessary to construct their hidden army, but also create a moral coalition that could stand in contrast to the tyranny of the Sith and the decay of the Republic. The Jedi would transform from peacekeepers of the status quo to leaders of a revolution, a bold shift in their historical role. However, such a move would not come without its challenges. The Sith, ever watchful, would recognize the danger posed by an independent Jedi order. The Galactic Empire, should it rise as Palpatine intended, would likely prioritize the eradication of this rebel army, deploying its vast resources to crush the Jedi before they could gain significant traction. This would force the Jedi into a perpetual state of evasion and secrecy, relying on guerrilla tactics and subterfuge to survive. The decision to abandon Coruscant would strip them of their traditional stronghold and resources, but it would also free them from being an easily targeted institution. The Jedi, scattered and elusive, would become a shadowy force, striking at the Sith's power where they least expected it. Internally, the Jedi Order would face its own set of trials. The transition from a monastic order tied to the Republic to a revolutionary force would require a rethinking of their philosophy and methods. Jedi, trained to suppress attachments and avoid political entanglements, would find themselves navigating the messy, morally ambiguous world of rebellion. Some members of the Order might resist this shift, believing it to be a betrayal of their teachings. Splinter groups could emerge, with factions arguing over whether the Jedi should continue as warriors or return to a purely spiritual role. The leadership of the Order would need to adapt, fostering unity in a time of profound transformation. The Jedi's choice to build a hidden rebel army would also have profound effects on their relationship with the Force. No longer tethered to the institutions and constraints of the Republic, the Jedi could deepen their understanding of the Force in ways previously unimaginable. They might explore new techniques, philosophies, and traditions, incorporating insights from the many cultures they encountered during their rebellion. This could lead to a renaissance of Jedi thought, a period of innovation and growth that would make them more formidable opponents of the Sith. Yet, the stakes would remain unimaginably high. The Sith, with their mastery of manipulation and power, would undoubtedly see the Jedi's rebellion as an existential threat. They would exploit every opportunity to sow discord among the rebels, turning allies against each other and undermining the Jedi's moral authority. The Jedi would need to remain vigilant, constantly balancing their commitment to justice with the harsh realities of war. Every decision would carry the weight of the galaxy's future, forcing the Jedi to grapple with the very essence of their identity and mission. In this alternate history, the Jedi's abandonment of Coruscant and their transformation into leaders of a hidden rebel army would mark a profound turning point for the galaxy. It would be a story of courage and sacrifice, of an ancient order rediscovering its purpose in the face of overwhelming darkness. By choosing to fight on their own terms, the Jedi would offer the galaxy a glimmer of hope, proving that even in its darkest moments, the light of the Force could still shine brightly. The decision to abandon Coruscant would likely ripple through the galactic political landscape, creating an unprecedented power vacuum in the Republic's central governance. Without the Jedi's guidance and protection, the Senate would find itself increasingly vulnerable to the manipulations of Palpatine and his Sith machinations. The Sith's plans for a galactic empire might accelerate as the Republic's faith in its own institutions faltered. Senators and planetary leaders, disillusioned by the Jedi's apparent withdrawal, would scramble to align themselves with whoever seemed poised to take control. This chaos would grant Palpatine an even stronger foothold, allowing him to tighten his grip on the Senate and deploy his forces with fewer checks or opposition. On the other hand, the Jedi's withdrawal might inspire hope among those who had begun to question the Republic's ability to resist the rising darkness. For countless beings living in the Outer Rim and beyond, the Republic had long been a symbol of neglect and exploitation. The Jedi, freed from their roles as enforcers of Republic law, could now extend their influence to these marginalized regions. By focusing on building alliances with these disillusioned systems, they would create a network of resistance far removed from the core world's bureaucratic stagnation. The process of constructing a hidden rebel army would demand an extraordinary level of strategic planning and resourcefulness. The Jedi would need to identify a secure location, likely in the uncharted reaches of the galaxy, where they could establish their base of operations. The choice of such a site would be critical, as it would have to be both defensible and far enough from major hyperspace lanes to avoid detection. Remote, resource-rich planets like those found in the unknown regions could serve as ideal havens for this fledgling resistance. Here, the Jedi could train recruits, develop new technologies, and stockpile the resources necessary for a prolonged conflict against the Sith. Recruitment would also present a unique challenge. The Jedi's traditional policy of recruiting only younglings would no longer suffice in a time of galactic upheaval. To build a viable army, they would need to welcome beings of all ages and backgrounds, uniting soldiers, engineers, spies, and strategists under their banner. This inclusive approach would likely lead to a diversification of their ranks, with new recruits bringing skills and perspectives that the Order had previously overlooked. However, this shift would also require the Jedi to rethink their rigid doctrines and training methods, embracing a more flexible approach to accommodate the needs of a broader coalition. In building this rebel army, the Jedi would inevitably draw attention from the Sith and their allies. Palpatine, with his extensive intelligence networks, would view this resistance as a direct threat to his plans. The Sith's response would be swift and brutal, sending inquisitors, bounty hunters, and Imperial fleets to hunt down the Jedi and their allies. This would force the Jedi to adopt guerrilla tactics, relying on stealth, mobility, and hit-and-run attacks to keep their enemies off balance. The Jedi, once accustomed to fighting on the front lines, would now need to master the art of asymmetrical warfare, blending their mastery of the Force with the pragmatism required to survive in such a hostile environment. The Jedi's decision to operate in the shadows would also reshape their relationship with the galaxy's citizens. No longer seen as aloof peacekeepers tied to the elite institutions of Coruscant, the Jedi would become symbols of resistance and hope. Stories of their heroism rescuing villages from Imperial oppression, sabotaging Sith-controlled operations, and protecting vulnerable populations would spread across the galaxy, inspiring countless beings to join their cause. This newfound connection to ordinary citizens would deepen the Jedi's understanding of the galaxy's struggles, enriching their connection to the Force and strengthening their resolve. The Sith, however, would not sit idly by. Palpatine's genius lay in his ability to exploit divisions and manipulate his enemies into self-destruction. The Jedi's hidden army would present a tantalizing target for such schemes. The Sith could infiltrate the Resistance, planting spies and provocateurs to sow discord and mistrust among its ranks. They might also use propaganda to turn public opinion against the Jedi, framing them as dangerous radicals who threaten the stability of the galaxy. The Jedi would need to be constantly vigilant, balancing their military objectives with the need to maintain their moral integrity and the trust of their allies. As the conflict escalated, the Jedi's rebel army would inevitably come into direct confrontation with the Galactic Empire's forces. These battles would be unlike anything the Jedi had faced before, pitting their resourcefulness and unity against the overwhelming firepower and discipline of Imperial fleets. Every engagement would test their resolve, forcing them to adapt and innovate in ways that the traditional Jedi Order had never imagined. The struggle would also forge deep bonds among the rebels, uniting beings from countless worlds in a shared fight for freedom. Ultimately, the success of the Jedi's hidden rebel army would depend on their ability to remain true to their core values while navigating the brutal realities of war. By abandoning Coruscant and embracing their role as leaders of a galactic resistance, the Jedi would embark on a journey of profound transformation. They would no longer be defined solely by their ancient traditions or their ties to the Republic, but by their willingness to fight for a galaxy free from the grip of darkness. This new path, fraught with danger and uncertainty, would challenge the Jedi in ways they had never before encountered, pushing them to the very limits of their strength and wisdom.